Welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Hannah Kraus, and I am the Growth Marketing Manager at Icon. Looks like we have a few people joining, but we'll go ahead and get started with a couple housekeeping items before we kick off the presentation. First of all, this session is being recorded, so we will share it out to all registrants via email later this week. And second, if you have questions during the presentation, please type them into your Zoom Q&A box in the control panel. We have reserved time at the end for questions, but don't hesitate to submit them as they come to mind throughout the presentation, and then we'll address them at the end. So to kick things off, I'm excited to introduce our two presenters for today. We have Lori Rowley. She is a social entrepreneur dedicated to building companies that improve financial security. She's the co-founder and president of Icon, the country's first portable retirement plan. She is also the founder of several successful companies, including NARP and NLabs, where she still holds board positions. She has a background in behavioral finance and research, having helped launch the Behavioral Finance Forum. She's widely regarded as an expert in financial decision-making, human-centered design, and strategy. We also have John Sweeney here with us today. He is a financial services leader with expertise in investing, retirement, fintech, and blockchain. John is the former EVP of retirement and investing strategies at Fidelity, where he led the redefinition of Fidelity's accumulation, retirement income, and investment guidance initiatives. He is currently a managing partner at Momentum Capital Partners, where he provides consulting services to the financial services industry, and he also serves as an advisor to Icon Savings Plan. So thank you both so much for joining. From here, we're going to go ahead and actually kick off a poll to kind of get some feedback from the audience on where you are at personally with your 401k. So do you happen to have an old 401k plan from a previous employer that you have not rolled over? And if the answer to that question is yes, how many of those accounts do you still have? So we'll give a couple seconds to answer that question, and then we'll go ahead and share the results to kind of get a feel for where everyone's at.
Thanks, Hannah. That was a great intro. John, hi. Nice to see you today. Thanks for joining.
Lori, great to be here.
Thanks. So, sorry, go ahead.
I'm happy to chat with you about this really important topic. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So just a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. We'll talk about the current retirement savings system and why we really feel like there's some need for innovation there. And then how portable retirement really radically simplifies workplace savings for employers and employees. We'll talk about portable retirement in action and give you some case studies about how it's working. And then we've got some Q&A time at the end. So we'll just kick off. I don't know, Hannah, if you have the results from that poll yet.
I do. Looks like 64% of the audience does have an old 401k plan open. Some even have more than 3.
Yeah, it's a big issue. The leftover accounts, there's actually $1.3 trillion in retirement accounts held at old employers. So this is one of the things that we're trying to solve for with Icon. John, do you want to kick us off on sort of giving us the history of retirement savings and how we've arrived at this moment today?
Sure. If we think back to our grandparents' era, they worked at one company often for their lives. They lived in the communities where they worked, and the companies had this patrician view of taking care of the folks in their community that resulted in a lot of social programs, but most importantly for the folks working, for pension plans. And they were basically a lifetime agreement with the employer and the employee. Work for us for a long period of time, and we'll provide you a lifetime stream of income for as long as you live. And that worked very well up until the 1970s, when Congress passed the opportunity to invest in a 401k plan. And what you saw there in the 70s, and particularly in the early 80s when they really started to take off, was that people who had this defined benefit liability on their books said, well, I can figure out how to just contribute a certain amount to an employee's account and allow the employee to invest the funds as they saw fit. They provide a lot of advice and guidance, and obviously over time you had managed account solutions put into the 401k to help manage portfolios for clients. But the incumbent, responsibility was incumbent upon the employee to make sure that they invested A, appropriately, B, they contributed enough, and C, they knew how to withdraw the money when they got to the point of retirement. So that it required a lot of education. And what it reflected was that people didn't necessarily stay with one employer for a long time. They may switch jobs 3, 4, 5 times during the course of their career, and those poor 401ks, could be moved, but it was kind of an onerous process. You've got sort of a long process to get your money out of a 401k and move it either to your new employer's retirement plan or to an IRA. And so what we're seeing today is a real big demographic shift where folks are working in many more different types of work environments than our parents and our grandparents. And what we see are statistics today that suggest that as much as a third of the employee population in the United States today has a gig economy job. That could be their primary source of income, where they're working as a computer programmer, as a consultant, as an Uber driver, whatever the opportunity might be. Or it could be a side gig. Maybe you make crafts and you sell them on Etsy and you get some income through that. But there are portable retirement plans that are coming into fruition here that serve this gig economy worker, which is really reflective of the type of relationship that both employee and the employers want. We all want to be more flexible. We want to work on a project for a period of time, and then maybe we want to re-up with that same employer, or maybe we want to move to a new project. But there's an opportunity here to really have a shift in retirement savings programs that mirrors the change structure and relationship that we have with the folks who provide employment to the workers of America today.
It's great, John. Thanks. So let's talk about what some of those changes are that are happening in the workforce. So John, you hit on it. So this mobility within the workforce, it looks like people are changing jobs every about 2.7 to 3 years. And we can also talk about these changes to the 1099 workforce. What do we see going on there?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, changing jobs every 2.7 years. So let's just extrapolate that out over what was primarily or formerly a 30, 40-year work history. That's a lot of employers that I'm going to be working for. So if I'm an employer, I really don't necessarily want a lifetime liability on my books for an employee who's worked for me for 2.7 years. If I'm an employee, maybe I left because my plant closed. Maybe I took a new opportunity. Maybe my company folded. I really don't want to leave my retirement assets and whatever I've accumulated in a plan that is with an employer that I no longer have a relationship with. So on both sides of the equation, the employee wants to have more control of the assets, and the employer is happy to provide that control back to the employee. With the rapid increase to 1099, as I mentioned, there's a shift in the employer-employee relationship. In some cases, that's just, we're going to hire you for a project. We've got a project that we're going to roll out, and it could be a 6-month project, a year-long project. We're going to pay you as a 1099 worker. And in fact, the projections are that half the workforce in the United States in the next 5 years is going to be paid through a 1099 structure. Again, that's a symbiotic relationship there where the employee feels comfortable with that relationship, likes the flexibility. The employer likes the flexibility to not have those employees as fixed costs on their balance sheet. And so what that means is that, all of us are expecting a better relationship and experience. We all know how easy it is to shop online. We all know what we demand in terms of information access online. So our expectations have been raised, and we really want these frictionless experiences in all of the onboarding, enrollment, processing, et cetera, that we've come to expect in all the other aspects of our electronic lives.
Yeah, that's a great summary. How are these sort of changes translating through to employers and sort of the struggle that they're having with offering a retirement plan?
So remember that an employer's plan is really a discretionary offering, right? Most employers offer it because A, it's the right thing to do. We want obviously our employees to retire successfully. We as Americans want people to have successful retirements. But it's hard to set up. These are expensive to maintain. There's a lot of record keeping involved, and you have what's called non-discrimination tests. You want to make sure that everybody in the organization participates, not just the wealthiest folks, the highest folks in the pay stack. So you have these non-discrimination tests that the IRS sets up to make sure that you, as an employer, are broadly encouraging participation across all of your employee base. Those tests have to be maintained and set up and monitored annually. So that takes some setup. They are hard to manage and stay compliant. And in fact, you as an employer take on a fiduciary risk of structuring a 401k. And what's happened is some employers have actually been sued for setting up 401ks that the law firms have contended have been non-compliant or not best in class or weren't monitored carefully enough. So there's a lot of liability that the employer takes on. if you're a Fortune 1000 CFO or treasurer or head of benefits, you can take on that responsibility. You've got a staff to be able to do that. But if you're a small business owner manufacturing widgets or selling goods and services in a small local community, that's a lot of responsibility to take on in addition to running your business. And so while many employers want to offer a retirement solution, it becomes very costly and prohibitive to do so. And so the 401k plan structure doesn't really work for those smaller businesses. And in fact, it doesn't really work for those 1099 workers who may not be there for a multi-year period. They don't have enough tenure really to get up and running and build up significant balances to make it worthwhile to enroll them in the plan, given the other liabilities and complexities with the existing structure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that kind of brings us to sort of the reason that we're here today, is to talk about sort of a next generation of retirement savings, workplace retirement savings that we've developed to really address these issues, John, that you've been hitting on. So portable retirement, the way that we define it, is a type of workplace retirement plan that enables every type of company, from a small business to a large corporation and even a gig platform, to offer a 401k style plan without the cost, the time, and the risk involved with a 401k plan. I'll just pause for just a second and say, this issue with employers trying to offer a plan is so extreme these days that a lot of states are mandating that employers offer a retirement plan. I'm in California, and we are a mandate state, so any employer with over 5 employees has to offer a plan. So let me tell you how we've built Icon, what portable retirement is and how it works. So as John was saying, technology has really transformed every aspect of life. So it makes things easier to use, it removes the friction points, and it simplifies the processes. And this is exactly what we've done with portable retirement. So we've really used technology to reimagine what's possible in workplace savings. So what this means from an employer perspective is that we've transformed retirement savings from a plan that an employer has to create on their own to a service that they can access. And to do this, we really borrowed from what we know works really well in the retirement industry. So from the 401k plan, we've incorporated automaticity, payroll deductions, people accessing it through their employer. We know that's how Americans save. People are 15 times more likely to save when it's offered through their employer. So really leaning into what we know works great in the 401k plan. We've also incorporated in the flexibility of an IRA structure. So using a form of an IRA that mimics in many ways a 401k plan allows for that personalization and the portability aspect. We've removed the fiduciary responsibility from the employer. We are the fiduciary. We are a registered investment advisor. And then we've built in education and behavioral nudges into the product so that people can make better financial decisions and stay on track with their savings and investing, and also other personal financial decisions that they have to make that really impact their wealth building and savings.
I think that's really important, Lori. Remember that Dick Thaler won a Nobel Prize recently for his work on behavioral science. And really the cornerstone of the work that he did was the nudges that he and Cass Sunstein wrote in their book, Nudge, which was how to put the right decisions in front of the customer. And you referenced that there's a lot of user design experience that went into the building of Icon around how do we take the best elements of the 401k and auto enrollment, auto contribution. How much contribution do I actually put in? Is 1% enough? It's not, right? So we want to encourage folks to actually contribute the most they possibly can up to the point of maximal contribution within the IRA, and then obviously help them allocate it and make them sure that they stay on track, particularly when you get periods of market volatility. So all those nudges that Thaler referenced in the 401k plan design that were successful in, I think his Nobel Prize attributed billions and billions of dollars of additional savings, retirement savings from those nudges that were built into the plan, are elements that you've taken out in the construction of Icon.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because one of the challenges with the nudges, and I've done a lot of work in this with Richard Thaler and Shlomo Bernatzi, is that how do you put those into a product, right? So we know what these things are that work, and it's really great to be able to build something from the ground up that really incorporates those concepts that we know work really well to help both employers and individuals make better financial decisions. And we can now deliver personalized nudges at scale through technology. So that's really where technology and behavioral finance can kind of work together to create better outcomes. So let's talk about how ICON impacts the employer and what their experience is like. So for employers, ICON works very similar to a 401k plan. So anybody using it's going to think it feels like that. But it's a turnkey pre-built plan, which means the employer doesn't have to go out and assemble the components of a retirement plan. We've already done it, it's pre-baked. So an employer can set up a plan on our platform. It takes about 30 minutes, maybe a little longer if you want to have a special onboarding or customization session with us. And we've automated all the steps and processes. So there's no really ongoing plan management. The plan runs itself and doesn't have any of the testing and compliance aspects, John, that you were referring to earlier, that are really burdensome on the employer. It's about half the cost of a 401k plan. And that's because, again, of the automation of the plan, and the structure that we're using really drives down that cost. We're using a plan structure that removes that fiduciary burden from the employer, and it's universally accessible. So the type of plan that we're using makes everyone eligible. So if you're a W-2 employee or 1099, it's sort of agnostic to what your status is. Also part-time workers. And because it's portable, when employers leave, employees just disconnect from the platform and they can continue to use the plan. So that's a great advantage for the individual saver. From the employer point of view, they don't have to worry about the liability of having abandoned accounts sitting on their book. John, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that, how that helps the employer, the portability, and not having those orphan plans behind.
Yeah, so it's just an interesting barbell. At the largest plans, you want assets in the plan. It helps sort of provide scale, et cetera. There are some employers who I mentioned still have that patrician overview of their employees, and they want to make sure that they help guide them, provide appropriate investments, and help give them retirement income solutions when they retire, and so they can distribute from the plan. There are small employers who say, I want to offer this as a benefit to remain competitive in offering services to my employees. But at the end of the day, I'm not a financial advisory firm. I'm an employer. I make widgets. I sell goods and services, whatever I do. So I need those folks to be best served by somebody who can help provide financial advice and look at it within the context of a whole household. So remember that this is not just, when you get to retirement income phases of life, it's not just about me as an individual retiring, it's me and my spouse, it's me and the next generation of folks who might end up caring for me in my retirement. So you really have to think about retirement income planning as a household view. Often we see clients come in with many different accounts. They have 401ks, plural. Obviously, in the poll earlier, we found that folks here, even on this call, had orphaned 401ks from old employers. That's fine. But when you get to the point of retirement income distribution, you actually want to pull them all together so you can see them in one place and manage them effectively. But then you also want to have visibility to your spouse's or partner's 401k. You want to understand whether they've got IRAs or Roth IRAs, and then because there's a whole sequence of how you withdraw funds from those different accounts that matters tremendously to optimize the net after-tax benefit that you get after you start withdrawing funds.
Great, thanks, John. It's very, very helpful, and that is one of the challenges too of having all those fragmented accounts out there. Let's talk about how ICON works from the employee perspective. So employees love how easy it is to use. You can have your plan is set up in minutes, and once you set it up, then it's yours and you keep it for life. So it stays with you. So savings are invested in a portfolio that's tailored to the needs of the person with low cost investments. Again, it's designed with an intuitive interface, so it feels like a modern technology product, again, with those behavioral nudges that help people make better financial decisions. And then, of course, it travels with you from job to job, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But when the employee disconnects from the employer, they can continue to use their plan. That's, again, a real advantage for the individual saver, because one of the challenges, of course, is having those as we just discussed, those orphaned accounts all over the place. And just dive a little bit into this platform that we've created and talk a little bit about how that works. So ICON really is a centralized platform that handles all plan administration, compliance, enrollment, portfolio management, customer service, any kind of transactions. So the employer sets up a plan on the platform. Again, it just takes under an hour. We link with payroll and banking partners and handle all the employee enrollment. So we take in that employee information, and then we create the enrollment experience for the individual savers. For employers that have complex employee groups, we can customize that plan to accommodate different types of employees, different locations, different types of payment systems. And the employer and the employee both have a dashboard that they can use to monitor and look at their plan. Our employee can use their phone to monitor what's happening with their plan and engage with their retirement savings. And the employer has a really easy to use dashboard that gives them insight into their employees and their contribution amounts and what's happening with their plan. Everything's sort of administered from that self-directed dashboard. So let's talk about, yeah, go ahead, John.
Laura, I was going to say, so tell me what the enrollment process looks like, right? So one of the challenges that employers have is, how do I get my employees to participate? Yeah. Everybody's got a budget. Everybody's trying to pay off other bills, and retirement is one of these bills that comes due 40 years from now. So I'd rather pay my rent, my student loans, my car bill, whatever I need to pay this week. I'll worry about retirement down the road. Enrollment's got to be really hard. How do you make it easier?
Yeah, so this is one of the things, John, I've been studying for a number of years. You know, that our paths have crossed over the years of looking at how we increase enrollment rates. So my short answer to this question is, you know, we create, first of all, a frictionless experience, right? Make it super easy. Make it the easy thing to do is to have that plan. So that's where technology can help. And then by having tailored behavioral nudges that help people, one of the things that we've built into the product that came from one of our other advisors, Shlomo Bernatzi, is putting in tailored defaults in a dollar amount, because it's easier for people to understand dollar-based savings and percentages. And that's really great to help people get saving, because they're like, oh yeah, I can save that much every week or every month, and not putting limits on how low it can go. So it's a good way to get people started with the idea of saving and investing. On the other hand, you're an investor that's used to saving, you know, easy to get the plan up and going and stay consistently saving across your savings journey. And having it all digital, by the way, I know this sounds crazy in this day and age, but in the 401k system, believe it or not, it is still not an all digital process.
How about tailwinds, though? You talked about regulations in California coming into play. What's behind that? What's driving that from a legislative standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, what's driving it is that there's 81 million Americans that don't have access to a plan, right? There's, you know, $94 billion cashed out of 401k plans every year because there's so much friction in that system. And there's a $4.3 trillion retirement savings deficit that we have, which means that's the gap that people need to have saved for their future. So what we're really doing with Icon is really sliding into, you know, the 401k plan is good for a whole bunch of people, but for everybody else, we need a different type of plan. And that's really the need that Icon is going after. So, you know, sort of the new era of the future of work, where people are much more mobile between jobs and have different sort of categorizations of employee types.
Sense.
Yeah. And, you know, I can show you, John, exactly how we're doing that with some case studies that we pulled together about some employers and different types of companies that are using Icon. So the first one is a 350-person business in Los Angeles. They work doing home health care. They have a large 1099 workforce. I think about 90% of their workforce is 1099. And they were in the situation, John, where they didn't want to have like 10% of their workforce has a retirement plan, you know, through a 401k plan. Everybody else doesn't have anything. So they're using Icon so that they can cover their entire workforce, which has been great. It's great for the company because they retain those 1099 employees. It's great for the individual, you know, those 1099 workers, because now they have access to a workplace savings plan. Another example is an architecture firm here in San Francisco. They are 90 people. They actually have a 401k plan and came to us and said, financial wellness is incredibly important to us and our employees. We'd like to offer Icon alongside our 401k plan, which they did. And so they have people using both savings in both of those plans. And another example we get all the time are smaller employers. So a 12-person, this happens to be a startup in Massachusetts. They went with Icon because it's really fast to get that plan up and going, and it's easy. And they like the tailored portfolios that we offered to savers. Thanks, Hannah. If we look at the pricing, of course, pricing is always a topic in retirement savings and investing. So we've made Icon really one of the sort of north stars of our product is to really deliver the most affordable retirement savings plan. So making it really easy for any employer to offer a plan and for people to save. So we've done that through, again, automating it through our software process and our platform. So employers pay a flat monthly software fee that's based on the size of the company, and the employee pays an individual flat monthly fee that's sort of a subscription model that includes all of their transactions and everything that needs to happen for the plan. We do not charge an additional AUM fee for Icon on top of that. We did a pricing comparison so that you can see what that cost difference makes and how that compares. So this is a complete apples to apples comparison for a 100-person company with 50% enrollment and a 50,000 average balance in the plan. You can see the cost difference on the employee fees, how much the employees would be paying the average 401k versus Icon, and also the employer fees versus the Icon fees. Thanks, Hannah. And we'll talk a little bit about our asset management fees. So our portfolios are constructed with ETFs from leading asset managers. Our average fund fees are 7 basis points, which is significantly lower than it is in the small end of the market on the 401k side.
So that, that sort of combats some concerns that people might have with products in the industry, that you're using really high fund fees that are paid for by the employees to subsidize the cost of administration. You've really tackled that one head on, it seems like, by using some really effective products from some firms that are notable for their efficiency and value pricing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that is one of the unfortunate, I would consider it an unfortunate condition of some plans in the 401k industry, is that they really put all of the cost for the plan and plan administration on the part of the individual saver. So they're paying disproportionately high fees for that savings.
Yeah, I mean, remember, this is a discretionary offering in a lot of cases. That's changing, as you referenced, with some of the legislation. But today, an employer has the option to offer a 401k plan to their employees. Certainly, it's competitive if you want to retain and attract the best talent. But I think that to find an efficient way for folks to allocate portfolios through low-cost products is a great way to. I think of it as, if you're running a race, you're just starting a few yards ahead of somebody else, right? So it's just an advantage.
That's a great way to think of it, John. We should have put that as a slide in here, but next time. And then a few questions on a few topics on the sort of plan design and how that works. So Icon works for both a W-2 and 1099. The average contribution in a 401k plan is about $4,200. The annual contribution limit in Icon is $6,000. It follows the IRA limits. There are matching contributions for some plans. About 48% of plans have matching contributions. And with Icon, it works a little differently. An employer can give a financial wellness bonus. That's one of the differences in the two plan types.
I think that's important. What we've seen in employee requests of their employers is not every employee has the same need. Right. Some people have as I mentioned, current liabilities, perhaps very large student debt that they just need to pay down before they can start to tackle some other goal. So perhaps that financial wellness bonus is best allocated to paying off student debt. We obviously understand the power of compounding, starting early, things like that. So I would advocate to every young saver, young worker, put as much into the 401k as you possibly can, or the IRA in this case, because you get to benefit from that power of compounding over time and figure out how to balance the sort of current liabilities. But that's a trend that employers are listening to their employees and saying, I'll give you a financial wellness number, an allocation. You as the employee allocate it how you see fit across the multiple services that we offer.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a trend that we're seeing too, and employers are really looking at how do we address that need? And this has been a great way of doing it. We have employers doing this now with Icon and giving that bonus. Employees really like it. There's no opportunity for that to be clawed back, and they can allocate it to whatever their emergency expenses that they have, or put it all towards their retirement. So before we go with any questions, our final slide here is the people behind Icon. So myself and a group of other industry experts created Icon really to address this sort of challenge that we've outlined earlier around the lack of retirement savings because of the lack of access. And the idea here is really to create a new type of workplace plan for the 21st century workforce. So that wraps up the formal part of the presentation. John, I can see we have a bunch of questions here, and I think we're going to ask Hannah to help us answer some of these questions.
Yes, definitely. We have had a few come through, and don't hesitate to continue asking as we go through the Q&A. The first one I'm seeing here. So I understand that California is rolling out mandated retirement plans. Is Icon eligible for this?
Icon is eligible for this. Yes, that's a great question. It's a payroll deduct IRA with auto enrollment, one of the qualifying characteristics of a California plan. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, let's see here. Why is Icon so much more affordable than a 401k?
John, maybe you want to talk about how 401ks are priced and how the pricing structure works there, and we can talk a little bit more about the technology in Icon.
Yeah. So, as we mentioned, there's obviously plan sales, right? You've got some very high level conversations with heads of benefits, chief human resources officers, treasurers, CFOs, et cetera. And they're trying to make cost effective benefits decisions for their employees. So there's a sales cycle there. There's a cost of service. And one of the questions that came through is how do we service the employees effectively? A lot of times people have questions about how much do I contribute or not, right? How much do I contribute? What funds do I select within the lineup? And there's questions about enrollment and how do we increase enrollment? And I think as Lori referenced with her behavioral finance background, it's a lot around narrowing the decisions and trying to get to the best answer for most, right? Contributing is always better than not. Contributing more is always better than not. And here what we're doing is we're saying, here's the maximum that you can contribute each month to get to the $6,000 annual contribution limit. And then the third piece is the managed solution where we're using low cost funds, but allocating them in an age appropriate way to get to a diversified portfolio that, again, we think is best for most. And so if you eliminate some of those decision points, you can actually get people through the funnel and get them enrolled and contributing more quickly. And so I think that's one of I'll say the functional or design benefits that allows us to simplify the process and get to a price point that I think is more attractive for both the employer and the employee.
Thanks, John. You handled that entire answer for me. Thank you. Hannah, other questions?
Yes. So one came in. I am the 401k plan administrator at my company, and I'm very worried that the vast majority of employees don't know how to invest their money. We hold educational sessions frequently, but the interest in learning about it is rather subdued. Do you have any suggestions on how to get them engaged?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people want to have more personalized kind of experiences around their retirement savings and sort of broader, financial wellness. So one of the challenges is how do we have a conversation with people that isn't just about the retirement savings? Because to John's point earlier, people have a whole bunch of things they're trying to organize, right? They're maybe their student debt payment, other, debts that they have, and then savings. And then within savings, figuring out what you're supposed to be doing. There's so much information out there. So I know what we've done in the past that works really well, and what we're doing with Icon is really a simplicity of message, tailoring it to the individual person, and being able to provide information that's in the best interest of the individual saver takes a big step of it. Also, we have to think about how people want to access this information, right? So oftentimes we find that people don't want to have their financial information sort of exposed in that way in front of their employer. So being able to use sort of the education and information resources that Icon is providing, that the person can access at their own time and place, that they have the sort of mental bandwidth to think about it in sort of a more private setting, I think has been helpful. People are sort of not really wanting to engage with their colleagues in an employer setting to talk about, hey, I'm making really bad financial decisions. How can I do that? That they don't really want to expose themselves that way. So I think that being able to provide more personalized digital resources for people to help make those decisions is really helpful.
Definitely. Another question. Does Icon act as the record keeper and the investment advisor?
Yes, so Icon has built our own unique record keeping or plan administration system and is also the investment advisor. So we put people into sort of the word that's used in the industry that I don't really love is robo-advised portfolios. So we're doing both sides of the equation. Great. John, any other questions that you wanna hit on that we didn't cover before we wrap up?
I think one of the questions that's come up around, are there regulatory barriers, limits to contributions, things like that? There's a question about highly paid employees, perhaps in some of the examples and case studies you used. how should they think about this as a substitute or a sidecar product for other retirement savings plans they might have?
Yeah, I mean, we're really seeing that employers have a huge focus on, it always has been, but even more so in the last 2 years, on financial wellness. So Icon can really be offered, as a standalone product for just a full stop retirement plan for that company, or in addition to other retirement savings, a 401k plan, for example, to help have an additional way. It's interesting, John, some of the large companies that I've been talking to, maybe only a portion of their employees are covered with a 401k plan. With so many companies using 1099 workers, they might have up to 30 or 40% of their employee base that doesn't qualify for the 401k plan. So we see employers wanting to have both types of plans in-house to help cover both types of workers.
Makes sense.
Especially in this competitive hiring environment, I think that's a real value differentiator to be able to offer. It's been really, really hard for anyone to offer anything for the 1099 workforce.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. Are there any other topics, John, or did we cover it all in our 35 minutes of reinventing the retirement savings industry?
You covered a lot. I mean, Laura, I'll say that there's a huge opportunity here, and I think about the product and the services that you've built as really tackling one of the major retirement issues or financial issues that our generation is going to face, but the next couple of generations is really going to face. And so you're building something that's got a lot of regulatory tailwinds behind it, but really looking ahead to changing employment structures. And I think it's quite innovative and priced well and effectively to allow employers to adopt. And I think it's going to resonate very well with the employees who want this kind of help as well.
That's great. And that's what we've seen. Thanks, John, so much. Really appreciate your help. Hannah, thanks for guiding us through this webinar. It's always great to have that support. And if anybody's interested in learning more or chatting, feel free to, I think my contact is in the webinar. Otherwise, you can reach out to us directly. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks.